Wild Horse Gravel is a rowdy event here at the High Lonesome Ranch out on Colorado's western slope. I did the event yesterday on the new Giant Revolt X in its stock configuration with a Fox 32 fork, dropper post, and the 50 mil Rambler tires. I also did a comparative test on the trusty GoPro. I got a 9 black with this new DJI Action Cam. I want to talk about the bike, I want to talk about Wild Horse and how the context of each informed my experience of the other. The race was won by a certain Lachlan Morton and lifetime Grand Prix racer Deanna Males. We were all led out by 11-year-old Jace on his horse for the neutral section leading out of the ranch. As the massive rainfall and some of the snow melt did some serious damage to the upper part of the course, it was shortened to 45 miles, a rough and chunky 45 miles. I went and did a second lap of the course with another lifetime Grand Prix contender, Leah Vanderlinden. That was a good time until the very end, when it wasn't. One of the treats about this event is the fact that you can stay here at the ranch, and probably a third, so maybe even half of the participants either camped or did the van life thing here at the ranch. There's still a good portion of those folks here the day after. There's also a few cabins at the ranch. There's no cell service out here, and at night it is so quiet and so dark, especially for city slickers like me who are accustomed to the ambient noise and light from living in town. This video is supported by Perk Coffee. I've been enjoying their Juggernaut dark roast here at the ranch. I ground the beans up at home before I came out here and make coffee like I always do in the AeroPress. Perk is a company that's all about cycling. In fact, the founders got into coffee because they were into cycling, and now they're giving back to the cycling community through supporting a number of initiatives and clubs and even a chucklehead like myself. If you'd like to save 15% on their great coffees, you can just use the code RIDE15 at perkcoffee.com. Before we get into it, let me tell you two things. One, I've got a new website, theride.bike. Go check it out. Not a .com. .coms come and go, but the bike is forever, right? And two, take a second to subscribe. That helps me out. I appreciate it. Now, sit back, enjoy your coffee, and enjoy the ride. Okay, let's talk some details on the Revolt X, details on Wild Horse Gravel, and then the mesh of how the two came together for me. The primary Revolt is a bike I love. I put that top of my list of top 5 gravel bikes for 2023. Revolt X, I'm not quite as sold on. Some of that you could chalk up to personal preference, and for me, a suspension fork on a gravel bike is definitely tending towards that, why not just ride a mountain bike? Not entirely, but that's just my general bias, so you know. But let's talk specs. You've got Fox 32 fork, 40 furious millimeters of travel. There's a giant dropper post, which has, you can see, about a centimeter of flex, maybe call it suspension. It bobs up and down, and when it snaps back up, you can kind of hear it thwacking. That is activated. It's a mechanical system. It's activated by a thumb lever, which you can press down from below or pull up from. There are Maxxis 50 millimeter Rambler tires. Rambler's tried and true OG gravel tire. It's something I recommend in the 40 mil width, typically. Pretty robust, a little on the toothier side. In the 50 mil, they feel sluggish and slow, and it's kind of hard to tease out, how much is the overall weight of the bike, which is getting close to 22 pounds in this size, medium large, and how much is just the inertia and the mass of all the rubber of the 50 mil tires. But I'm blaming the tires for at least a chunk of it. Mullet setup, you've got SRAM Force Axis 12-speed shifting mixed with an Eagle derailleur with a 1052 at the back. This is the X01 Eagle. So you got a 40 ring, 1052, I was using all the gears, and I could have used more, frankly, on some of the steep bits where we're getting close to 20%. .52. I could use more, to be quite honest. Bike comes in $8,500, not a bargain bike by any means, especially for a force bike. You know, SRAM Red is the tippity top. There are two other models. There's a $6,200 bike with rival GX Eagle and a $4,800 bike with rival One, which is the mechanical drivetrain. Geometry wise, it's actually kind of similar to the Revolt. Notable differences being the bottom bracket is higher, and while the head tube is pretty close to the Revolt, the fact that it's sitting taller with the big tires means there's more trail, so it's a little more stable at speed, which makes sense for a chunkier gravel bike like this. Last bit of shaping, the handlebars have a pretty wide top section, not for aerodynamics, just to disperse the load, which I find pretty comfortable. It's a rather deep drop for modern gravel. We've seen a lot of gravel bikes go with the shorter drop bar. And rounded out is the Approach SL saddle, Giant's house brand, which I actually feel is quite comfortable. Kept that saddle on the Giant Revolt that I raced at Unbound and Steamboat, and appreciate the padding and the shape of things. So those are the specs of the bike. Now let's talk specs of the race, and then we'll talk about my experience of the two together. The High Lonesome Ranch is a cattle ranch just north of DeBeck. Where the heck is DeBeck, you say? Are you familiar with Fruita, Grand Junction area of Colorado? It's just east of there. And like so much of the western slope of Colorado, the terrain is wildly contrasting. You've got these lush valleys, especially now after so much rain. You've got these steep, arid desert mesa walls. Part of the course goes through the Little Book Cliffs. There's also the primary Book Cliffs down nearby at Palisade. To the south is Grand Mesa, the world's largest tabletop mesa, as writer Mike Carter said. Grand Mesa, it's the highest form of flattery. There's still 12 feet of snow up there, so that's part of the visual charm of the place, is the juxtaposition of the traditional desert landscapes and the oranges and the reds and lots of browns with this very verdant, valley feel here in the ranch. There's also a lot of purple in the soil. I don't know where that's coming from, but it pairs quite nicely with this Revolt X paint scheme. Another cool thing on the course is a feature called the Goblins. You might call them hoodoos, crazy sand structures right on the edge of a cliff that the course goes past. One thing I love about gravel events is the sense of place you get, whether that's Stillwater, Oklahoma for Mid-South, or Emporia for Unbound. Once you're way out here at the High Lonesome Ranch, this is a fundamentally different experience than your day-to-day life, quite likely, unless you happen to be a ranch hand. You hear that? Exactly. Nothing. Here at the ranch, you get cooked breakfast before the event, and then there's a big country barbecue after the event. Music going from local bands who come up from Grand Junction, and as the parking lot, this field where everybody's camped, still attests, people are hanging out, a full 24 hours after, just because the location is such a nice place to be. There's a stream behind me that's running full blast to the point it blasted out a dam. I saw a beaver crossing the road. First time I've ever seen a beaver out of the water. Not only did the rain blow out the beaver's dam, it blew out huge parts of the course that left it looking like there was World War I trenches straight across the roads. Now here's my 2 cents on how this bike rode. Tootling around on it in Boulder, it feels sluggish, right? Compared to the type of gravel bikes that I normally ride and normally appreciate, which will be rigid and have a 40 mil tire. This being 22 pounds and having these big old 50 mil ramblers, from the first few pedal strokes, there's just a lot more inertia to overcome. So my split second bias was like, getting onto dirt doesn't feel as sluggish as on pavement, but it's still not as sprightly a bike as many others. And then when you get into chunkier stuff, you know, bigger rocks and rattly washboard, then it comes into its own. 40 mil isn't a ton of travel, but it's definitely noticeable on washboard. It's not going to make huge bumps disappear, but it just takes the edge off. And the same thing for the tires. You know, I was running these at, I don't know, 25, 27 PSI, something like this. That soaks up some bumps. That's the conundrum of gravel bikes, right? It's, you can't have one without the other. It soaks up bumps. It also soaks up some energy. My bias skews towards a little bit less. The dropper post, I didn't use a ton. Perhaps the most noticeable thing was how it bounces and pops back up when pedaling. So on washboard, it was, I don't want to say disconcerting, but you could definitely hear it popping back up to full extension as you rattled across the things. Was it more comfortable than a rigid aluminum post? Yeah, absolutely. My 2 cents would be, for most bikes, having a long post that's carbon, that's just got a bit of give to it, so you don't have the weight, but you've got a bit of give. The levers are a little fussy. Definitely takes more doing to press or pull up on than, you know, an electronically activated dropper like the Reverb from SRAM. You know, you push or pull on this to pull the lever, and then your weight pushes it down. Stand up and push or pull again, and it springs back up to either the full position if you're not weighting the saddle, or to wherever your body is if you want to bring it partway back up. I found that the lever compromised hand position a bit, in that if you wanted to have your hands on the brakes, which of course you do, you need to have your thumb up over the top of the lever in order to easily get reach. By having your thumb underneath, that means your hand has to be further back down, and so for me, I could only get, you know, a finger there. The trade-off was, by having the thumb on top, you're not getting the same full grip with your thumb around the bar as you would without that there. So it's not that it felt unsafe, but certainly not as stable as a full grip. Another thing I noticed about having my hand underneath was that on really rattly stuff, the lever would kind of dig into my hand a little bit. So not my favorite lever. Otherwise, the cockpit is super comfy. You know, the smooth transition from the hoods to the bar make for a nice comfy perch. And again, the flat tops of the bar, you know, disperses some of the pressure. So, you know, a lot of people were asking me after the event, hey, what do you think about the suspension fork, including Deanna Miles, who is, as a RockShox engineer, has a very good understanding of suspension. And one of her questions was, well, how do your hands feel? I'm like, well, they feel fine. She's like, Also, I should note, Deanna was not using a RockShox Rudy or any other type of suspension fork. She was riding a Specialized Crux. Good to see you. You ready to win?
That's always the goal.
So if you're looking to go fast on gravel, a rigid bike is the common wisdom for the fast kids at the front. If you're looking to have comfortable hands at the end of the day, however, a suspension fork could be worth considering. In addition to the deep ruts and some of the bigger rocks on the downhills, the first 5 miles or so of the gravel course was kicking up all kinds of big rocks. And I was hearing it, you know, banging off the bike, my bike, and others. After the neutral section, Lachlan Morton and Matt Pike blasted off basically as soon as the timing started. Tyler Jones was able to hang with them for a portion of it, and those three went 1, 2, 3 at the end of the day. The rest of us were, you know, blown into groups of, you know, 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s behind as the course, stair-stepped climbed all the way up from 5,000 feet at DeBeck to 7,000 feet at the aid station way at the tippity top. Throughout the day, I hemmed and hawed, yinned and yanged about appreciating the suspension, front, rear, and at the tires, and feeling like the bike wasn't quite as snappy as I would like it to be. That's part of the fun of gravel, right? Whichever bike and gear and tire you choose at some point, it's not going to be the ideal one for you out there. For me, and this will come as no surprise after listening to my spiel here, if you'd ask me which do you like better, the regular Revolt or the Revolt X, the regular Revolt all the way. If you feel that gravel race bikes are too racy and you want a cushier, comfier bike, then yeah, by all means, go check out a suspension gravel bike. I am a big proponent of testing bikes whenever you can, whether that's in an event like Outer Bike or hopping on your buddy's bike, or if shops let you demo bikes, checking out a wide variety just so you know what the parameters are. And if it just confirms your previously existing biases, great, you're on the right track. If it opens your mind to, hey, this is actually really cool, I want some more of this, there you go. Let's talk cameras. I've been running the GoPro Hero Black 9 for quite some time. On the KOM mount, I dig that just the quarter turn pops off and on. So like at the start of the event, I could be filming Jace and Lachlan and Matt and Deanna and whomever while riding, and then quickly put the thing back on. DJI's Action Cam has a pop-off. This is the Action 3. It has clips that are magnetized. So at first I was like, how do I know it's quite securely on? Whereas this is pretty clear. You've clipped the thing on. With this, it can be magnetized on, but not all the way clipped in. So this takes a little bit more care to make sure you snap it back on. So I didn't mess with that during the race as far as popping it off and popping it on. But before and after, and in the pre-ride, I definitely popped it off and appreciated being able to toggle between photo and video mode. The photos don't look as good as a proper digital camera, but it's quick and easy to jump between modes there. The stabilization seems to be really good. The way these cameras do stabilization is they film top to bottom, and then they'll chop off a little bit from the top and the bottom so that you've got a steady image even when you're riding on washboard on gravel. DJI Action 3 seems to do a very good job of that, comparable to the GoPro. The saturation on this was noticeable. It is super lush and green out here for sure, but just looking at the first few clips coming out of this camera, it seems like someone had turned up the saturation a little unnecessarily. I need to get into the camera settings and play around some more. So I'll be doing a video more thoroughly comparing the DJI Action 3 with GoPro's latest and greatest, the Hero 11 Black, so you can watch for that. But initial impressions, yes, seems to be pretty good, and it's cheaper than the Hero 11. If you like the idea of camping at a ranch under the stars and doing some chunky gravel, I heartily recommend Wild Horse Gravel. If you're curious about gravel suspension, I encourage you to test it out for yourself. Don't take my bah humbug kind of take on this. See how you like it, whether that's at a demo or borrowing it from a friend. I realize that's not possible for everybody, but if you can, I think it's good to see what your options are and how it feels to you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for checking out my new website, theride.bike. And whether you find yourself on a horse or a bicycle, enjoy the ride.